today to make an announcement. I'm wondering if we could please add that to the agenda, perhaps as item 4.3.
Thank you. That's added, and so I also have an item to add, which will be under corporate services 8.3.1, which is a discussion on the FCM Board of Directors.
Mr. Chair, just to point out on the sheet in front of members, item 6.1, the delegation from Sylvia Roberts regarding State of the City there's been a request to withdraw that delegation at this time. And regarding item 5.1, government relations matters, that information was distributed to members last Friday.
Thank you. So, your addition was 8.3.1, FCM Board of Directors. 8.3.1. So, can I get somebody to move approval of the agenda? Oh, sorry, Councillor Vicente.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to pull item 10.2.2 from consent, please.
No, we'll get, when we get to consent, we'll do that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No worries. So can I get, so I think Councillor Singh has moved approval of the agenda. All in favor? That carries. We now move on to declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. Seeing none, move on to the consent agenda. Councillor Willens.
I'd like to put, if we could, move 9.2.1 into consent. It's about the road closure of the ribbon roll. It's just a standard format we've done before.
Thank you. Councillor Vicente.
As I had requested before, if we could move item 10.2.2 out of consent for question to staff.
Okay. Seeing nobody else, Councillor Vicente, would you like to move consent agenda? All in favor? That carries. We next move on to announcements, and we have 4.1, which is an announcement on the Emergency Preparedness Week 2019, and that's the council sponsor is Councillor Bowman. Speak after. Oh, he'd like to speak after. Sorry, we do have Ronald Daly, Advisor, Emergency Management, for Fire and Emergency Services. Welcome.
Thank you. So, good morning, Mr. Chair, members of council, staff, guests. Thanks for giving us the opportunity to promote Emergency Preparedness Week. We are in our 18th year, and we have also, over the years taken the opportunity to introduce new initiatives. And so for this year, we're going to be having the launch of our Lighthouse program. So EP Week is a national event that takes place the first full week of May. And so for this year, EP Week will run from May 5th to 11th. And the theme is Be Aware, Be Prepared, Emergency Preparedness Starts with You. And the focus will be on the importance of individuals and families being prepared for emergencies that could very well happen right here in Brampton. At this time, I'd like to show a short 30-second clip. Thank you.
In times of citywide emergency, faith-based organizations are ready to help. Introducing the City of Brampton's Lighthouse Program. The Lighthouse Program is an arrangement where faith-based facilities in Brampton are happy to open their doors and welcome you during times of citywide emergencies. The program will be launched during Emergency Preparedness Week, May 5th to May 11th. For details, visit brampton.ca/Lighthouse Program.
Thank you. So as part of our activities for the Lighthouse Program, we will actually be having an open door, which will be taking place at the Gurdwara Baba Nanak at 79 Bramsteel Road from 12 noon to 5 p.m. And that will actually run from May 6th to May the 11th. So for our Lighthouse, for our EP Week activities, we will kick off this Saturday at Bramalea City Center Mall, in the former Sears location on the lower floor. We'll be there from 9:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. Then throughout the week, we're going to be having various booths set up across the city. So on May 6th, we'll be at Civic Center. We'll be there from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Then on May the 7th, so Fletcher's Meadows Secondary School, we'll be there from 9:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. 8, Peel Memorial Center, we'll be there from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Then on the 9th, Home Depot, which is at 49 First Gulf Boulevard, just right across Steeles Avenue. And then on May the 10th, we'll be at Brampton Civic Hospital from 10 to 2 p.m. So for more information on our Lighthouse program and our Emergency Preparedness Week activities, kindly go to www.brampton.ca/prepared or www.brampton.ca Lighthouse program. And as usual, we definitely solicit the support of council. Thank you.
Thank you, Ronald. And Councillor Bowman.
Thank you very much for coming and presenting to us. Our BMO team does a lot of great work. Most people don't see them, and that's a good thing because when there's an emergency, you will see them. So hopefully we don't have any emergencies that they need to react to, but they're there and ready. And this is an opportunity for BMO to encourage everyone to prepare themselves, their families, their businesses for any potential emergency in order to lessen the impact. I would hope that everybody here and anybody watching at home has an emergency kit prepared and put away in a place that's very, very accessible to them if they have to run out the door. But I encourage everyone out there to visit wherever we're going to be during this week, any of the centers, get some helpful tips. And on a personal note, I just want to thank the city's BMO team. You guys are extremely dedicated. You're always on the alert. You're ready. And I think you're a very big source of pride for this city. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ronald. And so, sorry. Appreciate that. Thank you so much, Councillor Bowman and Ronald. And we're going to move on to 4.2, which is a proclamation of National Youth Week, which is May 1st to May 7th. So we do have a proclamation, which I'll read out right now. Whereas National Youth Week is May 1st to May 7th, 2019, and whereas One Voice, One Team helps youth make the necessary decisions that move them towards success in their personal lives and allow them to have a positive impact in the lives of others. And whereas the City of Brampton is committed to offering youth programming year-round, special events during Youth Week, and whereas One Voice, One Team in the City of Brampton look to empower, inspire, and facilitate opportunities for youth to be catalysts in creating a better tomorrow today. Therefore, on behalf of the Mayor, Patrick Brown, and on behalf of the Brampton City Council, we hereby proclaim the week of May 1st to May 7th as Youth Week in the City of Brampton. Is anybody here to accept this? Okay. Okay, so we're going to get Councillor Santos on the board.
Thank you so much. Through you, Chair, we do have representatives here from One Voice, One Team. Orlando Bowen, who is the founder of One Voice, One Team. I would love to, I think you have a few words to share with us about Youth Week, and so we'll invite you to come up. But I just want to acknowledge the amazing work that One Voice, One Team does for the young people in the city. Most recently, a few weeks ago, we did pass a motion specifically on addressing gun and gang violence in the city of Brampton, and a good chunk of that motion that was passed unanimously talks about addressing the systemic issues related to gun and gang violence in the city, and more specifically about providing youth with opportunities and engaging them with the city and empowering them to make their lives better and to choose a much more positive path. And certainly one of the organizations that stands out that does that is One Voice, One Team. Councillor Vicente and I went there in July to meet with many of the youth in your office, And we were both inspired by what they had to say in terms of the support that they required as young people in our city. And over the past few months, we as a council have been working very hard to try to create those opportunities or even highlight those opportunities that are already here that perhaps the young people don't know about. So if it's okay, I would love for you, Orlando, to say a few words. And please bring your team with you.
Thank you, and greetings, members of council and the public who are present. One Voice, One Team has had the privilege of being able to serve in community and equip and empower young people to see beyond their current circumstances and to see possibilities so that they can make decisions, life decisions, social decisions, academic decisions that align with the possibilities that they see. For the last 10 years, we've been able to work with young people across Brampton and going as far west as Surrey, BC, and to the east in terms of Halifax, and to the south to places like Chicago and Green Bay. But during that time, we've never lost the understanding that Brampton is home. And, we've been blessed and honored to be able to serve, but there's so much more that needs to be done, as you're all aware. And when we talk about curbing antisocial behaviors and steering youth away from getting involved in guns and gang violence, it is going to take a collaborative effort, right? So we'll need all facets of community involved, community leaders, members of council, police services, fire services, the general public. So today, as we are here and are able to stand and represent that, and so gratefully accept the proclamation on behalf of the city, we want to say that we're here and we're committed to serving alongside you to make Brampton all that it can be. Because as great as a city as we are, there are opportunities for us to get better and to really be a lighthouse and a beacon for other cities when it comes to equipping young people to be catalysts and game changers today as well as tomorrow. So that being said, I just want to thank you on behalf of all the young people that we serve, about 25,000 of them per year, and want to encourage you to continue the great work, and please expect correspondence from us in terms of how we might be able to further collaborate to bring forth what's possible for the city.
Orlando, thanks so much, and we appreciate you guys coming out. It's an honor for us to have you here. So what I'm going to ask, there are people on board. So we'll get with everybody, all the speakers there, but in a minute, I'm going to ask everybody, as soon as all the speakers are done, that we go up and we take a picture and give the proclamation to the team.
Awesome, thank you.
So we're going to go to Councilor Pelletier right now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Orlando, for coming today, and thank you to your team. It was last week, my daughter came to me and said, Daddy, I have to do a project. I have to do a project on somebody that people find interesting. And it can be anybody in the world. And they've provided us with a list of, I think it was roughly around 10 names, but she could choose somebody else. And there was a lot of names on there from, all over the world. So when I asked her, who does she want to do? And she turned to me and said, Daddy, I'd like to do it on Orlando Bowen. Orlando, my father really respected you a lot for what you've done for the community, and just the fact that you always hold Brampton so close to your heart, and I just wanted to thank you for touching so many lives, and for somebody like my daughter to come to me and say this was one of those moments where you're really proud of somebody in Brampton, and if it has any aspect on the amount of lives that you actually touch. So I just wish, I just want to say thank you so much for everything you do. Thank you.
Absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Councilor Pelletier. Councilor Bowman.
Thank you very much through you, Mr. Chair. Very emotional, Councilor Pelletier. Thank you. I see Orlando almost has a tear in his eye up there too. Thank you very much, Orlando, for doing this. We've known each other for many years, and I've been to many of your engagements. And I just want to assure everybody here that you're a guy who walks the walk. There are a lot of speakers out there who do their speaking engagement and you never see them again. You're a guy who is involved with the city. You're involved with a lot of our schools where I'm involved with, and they love having you come and speak. And I look forward to any way we can collaborate with you and your team in making this a better city for everybody. And for anybody who doesn't know your personal story, I think that's a big part of the honesty that you bring, the honesty and integrity that you bring to your sessions. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you, Councilor Bowman. Thank you, and Councilor Santos.
Just one more thing through you, Chair, just in follow-up to what Councillor Bowman said and what Councillor Pelletier said. For anyone who doesn't know Orlando Bowen's story and the story of One Voice, One Team, I strongly encourage you to go to their website and watch the video that is there, and you will be brought to tears. And so I just wanted to point that out just in case folks have not seen that video yet.
All right, so we're all going to go up and give Orlando the proclamation. Okay, thank you so much. We're going to move on to 4.3, which is the Fold Festival Literary Diversity. Jill, welcome so much.
We're just going to start with a video. I know some of you are new counselors. I've shown it a few times before, but I just thought I'd get everybody a little bit familiar with what we do. Hi, everyone. My name is JL Richardson, and I am a Brampton resident. I'm also an author and the founder and artistic director of the Festival of Literary Diversity, the first festival in Canada to center around diverse authors and storytellers. So I just want to give you a brief update of where we are and a few things that are going on this weekend. The festival is happening May 2nd to 5th, all in downtown Brampton, just to give you a sense of how we're growing as a result of the support that the city's offered through the grant program, and as a result of some of the sponsors that have come on board over the last few years. So I won't go through all this, but this year we were really excited to receive the Freedom to Read Award, which is an award given by the Writers Union of Canada. It was given to me and the festival as co-recipients, and it's just a recognition of the work that's being done by the Fold and the way it's impacting the entire literary community across Canada. In terms of Brampton, we're really proud to be investing in Brampton businesses and to be placing the festival here. We make a point to use Brampton services for everything from our t-shirts to the signs we use to the vendors that we support with food services and things like that. We've had some really exciting things happen. It's really exciting to watch that video. Some of the people who are featured in it who were guests are actually on our planning team now. We had a woman come in our second year from England, and by the time the Fold came on in 2018, she had moved into the area as a result of visiting and coming to the festival. So we're really excited to see how the festival is not only transforming the literary community, but also just Brampton's growth and what Brampton is being known for. I want to highlight a few events for you. This is our first panel event that's happening tomorrow evening in City Hall Conservatory. You're all welcome to join us. I wanted to point out two authors there. On the left, you'll see Essie Aduyan. She's two-time winner of the Giller Prize, which is Canada's largest literary prize. She just won it this year again for the second time, and she's coming to the Fold to do a private book club and then also to do this event. The second person from the right is Ian Williams, who's a local author who moved out west to work at UBC and is coming back for the Fold. He posted a tweet today that he now knows what it's like to have a hometown game as an athlete and how excited he is to return to Brampton to speak. And then Natasha Henry is also a local educator who will be moderating the discussion. This is our opening gala, which is one of our premier events. It happens Friday at the Rose Theatre. This year, for the first time, we've partnered with the Rose and we'll be offering 2 days of programming inside the Rose Theatre. Already, that's allowed us to double the number of students that we serve at our school groups events. This event we're really excited about because it will feature an all-female cast. Every speaker who goes on stage and contributes to the event is a woman who's made a powerful impact on our community. We're so grateful to have Rowena Santos share a few words from the city there. And we're looking forward to having you and your guests if you'd like to join us. We're also really proud of this one. This is our Indigenous showcase. We have a number of Indigenous writers who will be sharing from their work. We have a hoop dancer who will be performing, a spoken word artist, and then a discussion all sponsored by Audible Canada. Audible Canada is our presenting sponsor. They've come on board for a 3-year commitment. This is the second year, and so this is the first time they've helped us curate a particular session that they want to showcase their sponsorship. The Writers Hub happens on Sunday. It's a free event from 12 to 3, and this is for writers to come and talk directly with editors about how to submit their work. One of the things we're really interested in is helping Brampton writers move through the publishing industry, to get published, to get their first books out, to advance into larger publishing houses if that's what they want. And so we have the really rare opportunity of having publishers like Harlequin and Penguin Random House set up tables in City Hall's atrium and talk to authors one-on-one about their work. And so we're really proud of this. This event has happened every year, and it's resulted in a number of publishing deals for writers with small presses and large presses. The last one I want to showcase is our teen track. It's the first time we're doing it. We have a full day of programming for young writers, so they can come. They'll work with those 4 authors in the morning, talking with them about the publishing industry, about writing, and then in the afternoon they do a workshop with those writers as well. And so it's just a great opportunity for me. The first time I met an author, it changed my life. The first time I met a Black female author, I knew something happened, and I didn't understand until a few years later what that meant, but I know the difference it makes to work with authors who look like you, who represent the communities that you're a part of, and who tell you that your stories are important. I want to announce here publicly for the first time that we're very excited as well to be offering a Kids Book Fest in September. So this year, for the first time, the festival is really going to focus on ages 12 and up, and we are going to do a whole separate festival from September 27th to 29th that centers around young children, and we'll have a whole stage set up at the farmers market and be doing events there as well. So we're really excited to present that. So I wanted to come here to thank you and to let the City of Brampton know just how much of a difference the granting program makes for organizations and how much of a difference it's made for me personally and my family. So thank you.
Thank you, JL. And we have a couple of speakers. Councillor Santos.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thank you, JL, for coming in today to share the growth of the Fold. You know, it's really grown quite a bit since its first launch. And it's amazing to see how, it is amazing to see how you have transformed, how the Fold has transformed literary diversity across the country and really put on the map, even more so, the need for diverse authors to be highlighted in our country. And the fact that it is here in Brampton is such a big deal for us because it does contribute to the economy and it really highlights what's positive about our city. And I just wanted to say that you are... The two people who just presented are part of a family of change makers. So Orlando Bowen is tackling a whole bunch of youth issues from a very systemic perspective on such important issues, and you are tackling, you know, literary diversity and diversity in a way that is so fundamental in terms of education. And so we are blessed today with a family of change makers, and you didn't share it, but I want everyone to know that you're related.
At Thanksgiving, we hang out at the same table.
So thank you. And I'm really looking forward to attending the events and being there on Friday night.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Willens.
Yeah, thank you very much, through you, Chair, for coming. I think it was the last term of council when you started Fold in Brampton here. And looking over at Kelly, she looks so pleased over there. Kelly was very excited when you started it our last term, and I went to the first one, and I've been to some of them since, and it's amazing what you've done. But more so, thank you from our council for coming and updating us on showing how successful the grant program is for you. We don't often see that. We often have a lot of people coming, they receive the grants, and we don't get any report back where the money's, how successful they've come. So thank you very much for coming back to remind us how important that program is to people.
It's
like
huge.
yourself.
I mean, in terms of the caliber of the festival, which is a lot of what people talk about when they come, how special it is, how professional it is, all those little pieces are because of not just that we received a grant, but the amount that we received allowed us to put the festival at a really high quality level. And it allows us to bring authors like Essie in this year who asked to come to the Fold. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, JL.
Thank you.
We appreciate you coming, and so we don't need to receive. Nobody needs to move anything, but we'll just have Councilor Santos move it anyways. All in favor? Thank you so much. Appreciate that. So there's no more delegations. There are. Oh, sorry, there's no more announcements. We're going to move on to announcements. No, government relations. And so Lowell Ruben-Vaughn, and I do apologize for having some technical difficulties here, so I'm moving back and forth with the agenda to my computer. But Lowell?
Thank you very much, and through you, Chair. I will go through this relatively quick and happy to answer any questions that committee may have. On tomorrow, there's a couple of regional council committee meetings. But really where I want to focus for a couple minutes is just on the work that staff is doing on the regional governance review. For those of you who were not at regional council, there was quite a long conversation related to the Deloitte report that was commissioned by the Region Appeal. Regional council ultimately did agree to move forward with an independent financial analysis. So the CAO, the CFOs, and our treasurer are working together with Ernst & Young to pull those financial numbers. Things are coming together relatively quickly, so we're hopeful to be able to share additional information over the course of the couple of weeks. Last week, the mayor, along with a couple of our councillors, did participate and host a telephone town hall For the most part, it was relatively well attended. We had at one point 1,200 participants join throughout the call. Throughout the hour, we had about 5,000 individuals called. They stayed on the line for a number of minutes. We had 73 questions that did come in, and of those we were able to bring to air 32 of those. So there was a lot of diverse questions, comments in particular around their views on the whole regional governance issue. The next couple of slides just really break down some of the poll questions. So the mayor did ask 5 poll questions. If there's specific questions, I'm happy to answer those. But for the most part, I think that residents really felt in like the status quo. The region appealed, the services in particular, Police Services Board, as well as the water and as a utility for the region appeal. I do want to highlight that on this Saturday we are hosting an in-person town hall, so that's May the 4th from 3 to 5. We would really encourage all members of council to help promote this event. We are asking those who do want to participate and ask questions to register with the clerk, so they can do so by registering at City Clerk's office at brampton.ca. Ideally, it'd be great to have those come in by 4:30 on this Friday. That's May the 3rd. So you've probably seen some of our social media activities, so hopefully we can continue to leverage your networks as well to promote that as much as possible. On the province side, there's a couple things that I really thought that it was important to provide an update on. This is why we did try to get the GRM out a little bit earlier this time. One is on the Endangered Species Act. There are proposed changes. As you'll recall, the city did provide comments on the first review. We have seen now what the province is proposing. So some of it is inconsistent, in particular around giving minister the authority to make decisions, whereas our submission and our comments were really around making decisions based on science and facts, but this really gives more discretion up to the minister. We're continuing to review the proposed, the regs, and we will be providing comments to that. The other one that we were expecting, this was announced in the budget, is significant reforms to the environmental assessment program. So again, staff is looking at this. On one hand, it helps some of our capital projects expedite the approval process. So I think that some of those changes are going to be positive. On the other hand, we also have to balance it with the environmental concerns that the City Council has raised. So again, when we provide the draft comments to committee or to council, we just want to make sure that it provides that proper balance to the province. And then lastly, there's been a lot of media discussions around some of post-budget announcements from the provincial government. Some of the items were not necessarily in the budget, and I know last week at Regional Council, the Chief Medical Officer of Health, as well as the CFO, started to talk about some of the bigger impacts, at least at the regional level, in particular changes to public health, changing the number of boards, the impact that it'll have from a cost as well as from a property tax increase perspective. So we're continuing to monitor that. There has been some further changes to the policing grants and guns and gangs. And again, this council has been very vocal in terms of support and funding. So some of the changes could potentially impact our ability to secure some of that future funding. So as part of the package, we did include a fulsome update of the the regional government review, as well as some fairly comprehensive analysis that the Association of Municipalities of Ontario has done. So we'll continue to be monitoring this, working with our partners at the Region Appeal, again, to really understand what overall impact that some of these decisions that the province is starting to make will have on ours and our residents and businesses. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Lowell. Councilor Bowman.
Thank you very much through you, Mr. Chair. Lowell, I don't have any questions on that, but I went further, and I have a question on 5.1.30. That's the, I think it's the AMO breakdown of some of the new things the provincial government is putting forward. And this involves, well, I asked Rav earlier, but I don't think Rav can answer in Chief's place. The Fire Protection Act, they have changed it. And they've added a limitation for periods of prosecution now, meaning that some of the violations that our fire department lays, or some of the fines that can be laid, if they take too long in coming to court, they will not be heard, they'll be dismissed. And with some of the changes that we're hoping to see, which may lead to a lot more fire violations in terms of illegal second units and dangerous second units, I don't see anything in the report that they've done to alleviate the huge backlog in our courts that has a direct correlation to whether cases get heard in time or not. Do you or Chief, do you know anything about that?
Through the chair, this is something that has been on the radar for the Attorney General's office, as well as the three levels of the judiciary who oversee some of the implications coming out of a Superior Court of Justice decision around Jordan, which limits the time that you can do prosecutions. And then behind the scenes, there has been funds allocated to increase the number of justices allocated to various courts, including Brampton. However, that doesn't necessarily address the issue for a lot of these charges for us that would in fact come to our Provincial Offences Court in many cases. We have been lobbying the Ontario Court of Justice for additional JPs. We do have the court space available. It's the additional number of JPs that we would be allocated, because our municipal days are heavily scheduled. And this is impacting not just anything around fire prevention, but a number of our other activities. I'm trying to schedule a call with the Chief Justice of the Ontario Court of Justice to look at allocating an additional JP, even if it means co-funding or partnering with the province to fund that additional JP to sit at our courts to facilitate and ensure and reduce the number of cases that we would have to get dismissed. And working with our Deputy City Solicitor, Diana Seuss, on the scheduling matters on the prosecution side, we're trying to add as many more municipal days as possible, but recognizing you raise an excellent point that this is could be quite problematic, because less important matters could be seen as getting precedent over more complicated and complex and important matters.
Okay, so I'm glad it's on your radar. Thank you very much.
Councillor Palleschi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Lowell, can you go back to the regional governance? And specifically the town hall? Unfortunately, and I've looked through the system I have here, and I didn't receive the email last Wednesday. I don't have it in my agenda. But when we're talking about the town hall, the questions that were asked, and then those ratio, the pie charts, is there any further breakdown that we can get from this and get it out through social media to residents and provide that further breakdown for council as well?
Through the chair, what specific breakdown?
Well, I guess the actual questions that the mayor asked, the questions that residents were asking, and kind of the breakdown on the discussion on how it was unfolding.
Through the chair, yes. So part of the memo, we've already updated our regional government website, so that's there. What we can do is start to include messaging this through our social media so it can have the questions. As an aside to this, we've also taken these questions, so this was just during the telephone town hall, and we've also now opened it up for the rest of the residents, so we've started to promote that as well, and we'll be able to provide some analysis, and I believe they have until May the 10th or the 11th to provide us with their feedback. So we will be able to add those results with this, and we'll continue to push this out. As part of the appendix, so the summary, we did include all of the questions that were asked, that were at least registered, and then also there was a number of questions that came in afterwards. So we also dictated those out, and we provided those list of the questions and comments that we received that were relevant to the discussion.
Okay, and the feedback, is that online feedback? And I noticed in here it said something about voicemail messages. Is
Yep.
it both? Or
Yeah, so the voicemail that we received during the telephone town hall is part of this package. We started to receive some questions through our online comment process, so we're going to be starting to pull those out and also going to be commenting that. We just thought that it was important just because of how quickly things are emerging both with the province and then also at the region, that we get something out on the telephone town hall right away. But there is going to be a series of metrics and reports that are coming out, but we can make sure that we definitely provide more updates to the residents over the coming days.
And just a question on, have we had any discussions with the province in relation to, I guess, when the decision is going to be made, and the decision that it will be based on factual information and not so much? And do we know, I understand Mississauga's sending out some postcards. Do we know what, I guess, what that kind of waste of paper looks like in terms of how many are going out to the households and what it actually looks like?
Through the chair, I have seen what the cards look like. I don't know if it's going out to all the households at the City of Mississauga. That's obviously the approach that they're taking. In terms of the work that we're doing, it's trying to leverage the resources that we have in technology, and then also really trying to follow the guidelines of the provincial government and the guidelines that the special advisors have set out. So our target is really doing a submission by May 21st that really articulates, what the city's position is, and that will include all the information, all the data that we've collected from multiple sources.
Have we ever seen another municipality mislead the public this much? With any other types of situations, have we seen a municipality or level of government kind of take an approach with the lack of facts?
Through the chair, I don't know if I can really comment on that. I know that there is now a process in place to get to the actual numbers. So again, all 4 municipalities are working together. The CAOs, the CFOs have met a number of times. There's another meeting tomorrow to get to the actual numbers. And hopefully that information will start to get disseminated once regional council and then hopefully our local council also has a chance to review that material.
Okay. Thanks, Lowell. Lowell, on the Dangerous Species Act, if we can scroll to that slide, and we provided initial comments, and what round are we in? Where are we in this process?
So this is round 2, so they have posted additional questions for comments on the environmental registry program. So those comments are due by May 18th. So we have an internal team that's looking at what's being proposed and then going to be providing comments back to the province by May 18th. So that's kind of where we are in the process as of today.
By May 18th, okay. And at any point, and maybe there's a question for council on the 8th, are we going to have more of a fulsome discussion on what the city is looking for in this, and with respect to the CBC's comments, TRCA's comments, and essentially what we want the direction to be when we provide those comments?
So through the chair, good question. So our intention is to get the comments to council a week before, so as part of your agenda package, and discuss this before we actually submit it. I think that it's important for that. We can do, my suggestion to the team was that we come back and provide a little bit of an update, not only on this one, but also on the environmental assessment one. Mm-hmm. And then what we were kind of considering is sometime in June, because there's been so many consultations. If you look at the AMO, they do a really good job of listing all the consultations. What we were hoping to do is kind of do a recap and kind of a summary in terms of here's what we provided comments on, here's some of the directions, so you can kind of see, hopefully holistically, what all these changes at the province is doing and how they impact us either directly or indirectly, how it impacts our partners and other stakeholders.
Well, typically there's never enough time given to municipalities to provide the comments or the level of comments that we want to provide. With May 18th, council meeting on the 8th, I don't have a calendar in front of me, but I guess essentially you want those questions in front of us in the next couple days so that we can have those discussions on the 8th next week at council?
Well, it's May 18th for the endangered species, so our hope is to have it distributed by May 10th for the discussion for the following Wednesday, which is before May 18th. So this will be a couple of days before. But what we can do is, as soon as a draft is done, we can always, circulate it to council.
Okay.
Just so at least you have a general sense, and then that would make it onto the council agenda.
So in the meantime, if I can ask, and we can get into further detail offline, but how this directly relates to items in Brampton, such as the Norval Quarry, Redside Days habitat, potential Redside Days habitat, and development in the city of Brampton.
It's through the chair, yeah, we can definitely have a offline chat, and then also maybe open it up to other councillors. If there's specific questions or items that you want staff to review, there's still time for us to consider those. So perhaps I can just send an email with a deadline, just so if you give us those questions or concerns or comments, then we can make sure that we capture those in to hopefully expedite the ultimate submission to the province.
And just a last comment through you, Mr. Chair. I guess what I keep hearing out there, and I can't, haven't actually found this in writing as of yet, but what I keep hearing, and I'm sure everybody's hearing this, is if you have a lot of money, you can interrupt kind of the balance of the species by throwing money at it, and that money goes to the province, and you can go ahead and build whatever you want. So maybe some clarity on that, and I just want to ensure that, again, we'll get, when the comments come to council, maybe we can have a further discussion on that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Flashy. Councillor Singh.
Yeah, Lowell, thank you for your answering all those questions and your report. My question is regarding the cancellation of the 50 million trees that the province, I guess the media covered, and I just want to know, does that affect Brampton in any way?
So through the chair, indirectly, so that was a program that municipalities themselves couldn't apply for, but it was more for the residential. I took a quick look when the announcement came out, and there have been from this program, about 33,650 plants or trees have been planted in the city of Brampton specifically.
Okay.
In particular around the Gorewood Acres neighborhood.
Okay. How many did you say? Sorry,
33,650, and that's just kind of a quick glance through the Forest Ontario who manages this. I was interested especially in particular to our 2040 vision, and one of the action items was to plant 1 million trees. So again, this was something that how we as a community and as a city can help to leverage it. So it does indirectly have an impact on the city of Brampton.
Okay. That's unfortunate. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Singh. Councillor Vicente.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Lowell. Can you just provide a little bit of background for folks who are here and who may be watching on the analysis that was done by the Region of Peel and Deloitte, what it presented and why the region has engaged a new study, and how that study will be different from the study that has already been done by the region?
Through the chair, I'll do my best.
Yes.
A very high level.
Yeah.
A very high level. So in preparation for the regional chairs meeting with the special advisors, Michael Fenn and Ken Sealing, there was direction to provide a financial analysis on three options. One was the status quo, so keep things as is, try to find efficiencies. The second option was dissolution, so breaking up the region of Peel. And then the third was amalgamation, so in essence, all three municipalities would become one large municipality. So through the report that Deloitte did, they found that the most cost-effective model, based on the information that they received, was the status quo of finding the status, and there are some numbers in there. One of the challenges with that report is it didn't include any information from the area municipalities, so all the data and information came from the region of Peel. So what council has now done, in essence, has moved that the CAOs and the CFOs come together to look at each numbers and really do that financial analysis on the three scenarios that the region did. So again, the status quo, the amalgamation, and dissolution. So again, breaking up the region appeal. And looking at a new set of assumptions, financials, because that's really the only way that you can come out to what is the real cost on any one of these models. We don't know for sure, unless you look at all the financial figures, what implications through property tax or users' fees would happen, unless you actually see all four municipalities side by side. We feel that that's a good approach, because then at least for the first time you can kind of start seeing the analysis and what costs and where funding is going and how it's being leveraged across the region.
And so this report, once it is prepared and is ready, will be presented to the region. And once it's made public, what can we here at the city do to ensure that residents here in the city of Brampton are aware of the findings of that report?
Through the chair, that's a really good question. So we've been thinking about that as well, and because of the importance of it and how it'll probably form a basis of the cities, because we feel that'll be a little bit more consolidated, it'll be a little bit more robust than what other municipalities have done within the region. We're hoping to be able to make that public. I think we're a little bit different than the city of Mississauga, where we only have some councillors sit at the region and some councillors sit here. So our hope, and working with the consultants, is that we can actually do a fulsome discussion here at the local level, just to make sure that all of our councillors see the information, hear the information, have the same information, and then also we'll try to break it down for the public. The challenge with this is, and I'm learning this as well, it's a very complicated and discussion that's going on. So the challenge for us is just to make sure that it's something that's easily digestible, because a lot of numbers have been thrown out there. So hopefully now we can finally get to a consistent set of numbers, and how you interpret those will obviously be kind of like the next step. But for us, obviously, we're looking to make it as easily digestible for our residents and also for ourselves.
Thank you. And so realizing fully that the information is presented and the decision is ultimately made by the province as to how they may proceed, we have a role in order to determine what our position is and to advocate to the province what we believe is best for the residents of Brampton and, of course, the region of Peel as well. And so I would hope that, and while I commend staff for all the amazing work that they've been doing to engage the public, hold the town halls, both the Teletown Hall and the one that's coming up this weekend, I hope that once we do have this analysis, that we will follow up with another public meeting and opportunity for residents to engage and for members of council to engage with the public and seek their input on those findings once we have them. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Vicente. Councilor Santos. Took yourself off? Okay. Oh, you want to put yourself back on then? All right. Can you get on?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. And you're off again. I didn't take you off.
Okay,
All right, we'll let you go.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thank you, Lowell. I have a question about the analysis moving forward, especially from the municipal level as we start to gather information. Are we just looking at cost, or are we looking at net cost, or are we also looking at the revenue side of things? And I'm specifically thinking about the provincial and federal funding that the region gets. And I'm going to point out an example on my favorite topic of cannabis, because the only reason why the region actually is getting $220,000 in change is because Brampton decided to opt in. So I'm curious, and just want to make sure we capture some of that revenue that Brampton has generated for the region, and also what the revenue would look like if the region didn't know, like the region wasn't there to receive revenue, for example.
Through the chair, the short answer is yes. So I think there's now 59 data sets related to the financial statements, and one of them is around external funding that municipalities have received. It goes back to, I believe, from 2013 to 2018. So I think it may capture some, the region should capture the, at least the first payment through the cannabis implementation fund, and then other sources that they have received. So we are looking at multiple touch points, and the next meeting is actually going to be digest. So we're collecting that today, so in 2 days we have to collect all that, and then by tomorrow we're going to be testing those assumptions and seeing what's in and out, so, but we can raise that.
Great. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Councilor Santos. Do you want to move receipt of those presentation? Thank you so much. All in favor? Carries. Thanks so much. Thank you, Lowell. We're going to now move on to delegations. 6.1 has been removed, but we're going to move to 6.2 now. Sylvia Roberts, in regards to food insecurity in Brampton. And you do have 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. So, food insecurity in Brampton, I'm talking about this because it's a growing issue. Here is a source from Mississauga.com, so Mississauga's equivalent of The Guardian. At the bottom, it has Knight's Table. I use this data source because I don't have Brampton data, and that's a problem. But if you look, you'll see Knight's Table, which has grown 83% in usage between 2015 through 2017, and that's very concerning. So facts from the Mississauga Food Bank, because they have an organization to consolidate this data, and we don't. Most of the residents rent their housing, and if you look at it, a substantial portion are on social assistance, some are refugees or newcomers, and if you look at who makes up the usage, it's heavily single parents and single individuals, and 6% are homeless. So if you look at how much is being spent on housing, what you see here is that food bank clients spend vastly more on housing than the average person. 64% on housing is a lot. So part of the reason why the poor have no food is, well, it's all going to rent. And that is something the city could actually address. But of course, we don't actually have data on Brampton because as far as I know, there's no one to consolidate it. And the region's most recent data is from 2013 to slash 2014, which is of course after Knight's Table reported this massive spike in usage. If you look at where the money is coming from, it's social assistance. Ontario Works and ODSP is about 40% of it, and 12% is employment, so they're having difficulty accessing employment. Their average income is about $1,400. What I would like council to do is have staff look at possible models for setting up an agency to coordinate it. It's Knight's Table's reporting this, but how do we know if this is a local issue, localized to the area, the population that Knight's Table serves, or is it across the city? We've got a number of food banks, and we don't have any kind of way to track the data on how many people across Brampton are using it. We can look at data in little sections, but they overlap, so how do you come up with data? Mississauga has had a coordinated agency for it's at least 20 years, and so it coordinates both secular and religious food banks. So I know that Brampton has a lot of religious food banks run by religious organizations. That doesn't seem to be a barrier. In Mississauga, maybe the city could look at running it, or the city could partner with someone like the United Way on setting it up. But it's something that needs to get done. If you check The Guardian, they'll list food banks, but they don't list things like soup kitchens. Hello? Everyone is looking around at the computer, so it's hard to tell if people are actually listening. So if you look...
Everybody's paying attention. There's just some issues going on with our mics right now, but we're paying attention.
Fair enough. Thank you. So if you look at The Guardian's website, it does list food banks. What is actually close to you, and it doesn't include things like soup kitchens. So a number of religious groups in Brampton, so for example 6, Longar, so it's not exactly a soup kitchen in how it would be normally defined, but as far as I am aware, that if someone comes there looking for a meal, they won't turn anyone away. And so it's because of lack of cultural awareness by established media organizations and the city. That kind of stuff is not advertised. So if, for example, if you're not sick, if you go there and you see that 6 are actually quite willing to help everyone of different faiths, and they're willing to help you, that can actually help improve your understanding and acceptance of other religious groups. I believe there's also a food bank run by Muslims in the city, and so the different faiths working together can help improve tolerance. So, well, why isn't this the Region of Peel's job? Theoretically it is, but to say, well, the Region of Peel should do it, that doesn't actually feed anyone who's hungry. And what's going to happen is Mississauga is going to say, well, we have a food bank agency and we've had one for decades, so why can't Brampton do that? And also, does Mississauga look like they care if anyone goes hungry in Brampton right now? Right now they're like, oh, well, think of how much money we could save by dumping Brampton. This is a map of high shelter costs, so you'll see that Brampton actually has much more of the city where people are disproportionately burdened by housing, which is what Mississauga found was where people's money is going. If you look at Mississauga, there is a portion that looks worse. That's around the city centers. That's very new luxury build stuff. So it's not really representative of the demographics of the region. So the conclusion is the city needs some kind of agency. It doesn't need to be city run, but it needs to cover the city, because the region, it seems like it's supposed to do it, but it hasn't been. And the housing crisis is substantially worse in Brampton, and housing seems to be the major cause of food insecurity. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Sylvia. And while you were speaking, there was councillors trying to get on the board, so we do apologize if it looked like we weren't paying attention, but everybody was. So thanks for that. And we're going to move to Councillor Paleshi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, for also recognizing that. And so we were listening. It's, we were a little bit shocked that Mississauga actually has facts, but
I know. I was shocked too.
Okay, I'll stop. But thank you for coming and delegating. I know there's definitely a passion that you have when you're coming to council so often, and we do appreciate it. And Mr. Chair, through you, I'm happy to refer this back to staff to look at how we get some of the actual real facts from Brampton. Thank you.
Do you want to just hang on while
I'll hold the referral.
we get Councillor Vicente on?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Sylvia, for coming here to highlight the need that we have in this community. Well, Councillor Santos and I, and I'm sure other members of council, have had the opportunity over the years to visit many of the kitchens and the food banks that we have here in the city. And it is true that they have certainly expressed to us that they feel like they're working alone. And if the city of Brampton were to take a leadership role in coordinating all of these efforts and helping them to organize, whether it's for advocacy or for being more effective, for meeting the needs of people who perhaps fit into different groups, or, it's important that these groups have a means and a central organizing body to assist them in the work that they provide. And so I fully support the motion to have staff look at this. And I think that this is actually very timely, considering that if we're looking at different governance models from the region imposed upon us by the province, we need to be ready. And to your point, given that Mississauga has been doing this now for quite some time, I think we're a new council, and we are identifying the needs as they are in the community. And so we should take a leadership role in this council to see that we're doing something in the area of homelessness and in the area of food insecurity. There are a number of groups in the city that are working, and if we brought them all together, I think that they would be more powerful and more effective at the work that they do. So thank you for bringing this to council's attention here today.
Thank you, Councillor Vicente. Councillor Santos.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Sylvia, for your presentation today. I also support the referral, and thanks to Councillor Paleshi for bringing that forward. Some of the root causes of crime in the city of Brampton, when it comes to the systemic root causes of crime and gun and gang violence, I keep going back to that motion, I don't know why, but is poverty and homelessness and mental health and affordable housing. And so this is a timely presentation, and in fact, as we start to look at what that motion means from that motion that was brought forward, we would have to be doing this stuff anyway. So thank you very much for your presentation, and I support the referral.
Thank you. So there is a referral moved by Councillor Paleshi, and we'll get it on the board right now. That the delegation be received and that the request referred to staff to consider options for gathering and harmonizing data regarding food bank and soup kitchen usage in Brampton, potential organization structures for coordinating resources, and methods to convey options to residents. So it is on the board. All in favor? That carries. Thank you so much, Sylvia, for coming. That concludes the delegations. We're going to move on to economic development and culture. There's no presentations. There's no reports. So we're going to move. Oh, sorry about that. There's 7.3.1, which is a report from Paul Aldinati in regards to, it's a status update on the Action Committee on Innovation in Post-Secondary Education. Councillor Bowman.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Happy to move receipt of the report.
Thank you. So moved by Councillor Bowman. All in favor? That carries.
Good job, Paul.
And the correspondence 7.4.1 was in consent. Councilor's question period. Does anybody have any questions from council? Seeing none, we got public question period, 7.6. Does anybody from the public have any questions? Sorry, Councilor Willens.
Just quick, I guess this sort of, I guess Kelly, or not Kelly, maybe Denise is gone, but maybe Paul can answer the question. With our entrepreneur thing that just opened up recently on George Street, we've had a lot of people in there. And those are clients, I believe, most of them are clients from our startup businesses and everything else. Are we looking at, I know that Ryerson is sort of going to be a shared space there, but are we looking at other opportunities for Ryerson? Because I'd hate to see Ryerson come in and take away what we've spent the last 2 or 3 years building. Not that I'm not in support of Ryerson, but I don't want to see them take all the hard work that Jen and her staff have done because it was packed the other day when I was in there, and they're all residents of Brampton, and they're residents that have come through our Entrepreneur Center.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, that's a fair question, and we are working steadily with Ryerson to try and get them more involved in that space. I mean, it is a pilot incubation innovation space, and Beck has worked really hard in working with the city and their team to put that together. We see Ryerson as an added bonus to have them in there and using their expertise, their reputation, their knowledge on the entrepreneurship space is world renowned. So to have them in there, I think, is a really important piece that we're trying to move forward with. Now, does this have to be the end of the line for the innovation hub? I mean, I think we can have probably more of these across the whole city. I mean, when we consider the number of applicants that they had within the first 24 hours of when the hub was announced, I mean, there's a lot of appetite for this type of thing. So stay tuned. I don't think this is the end, but this is just a pilot, and we're going to see more good things to come together with Ryerson.
Okay, good. I just don't want to see it deflect the hard work that our staff has done.
Understood.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So seeing no further questions, for corporate services, I was going to ask Councillor Singh if he'd like to chair from his seat, just so there's not a lot of shuffling going on. And after this section, Councillor Vicente can come in for, there is an added item.
For corporate services?
Corporate services.
Added item? I didn't catch
8.3.1.
8.3.1, okay. So, okay, I'll just hear from here then. So, well, seeing there are no items under the corporate service section, no staff reports, no reports, We have 8.3.1, FCM Board of Directors discussion at the request of Councillor Dillon.
Thank you, Councillor Singh. And so the FCM AGM is coming up in June, and there was a notification sent to all of our council members. And so Peter Fay, Mr. Fay does have a motion there, and so I thought it'd be important that we have a representative on the board of directors on the representing the Ontario caucus. And so there will be an election taking place on June 2nd to have a representative for representatives on the board of directors, and there needs to be a let me pull it up here. Yeah, sorry, a resolution of our council to endorse me or anybody else here who's interested in being on that board of directors. And so I have a motion here, and if you want me to read it.
No, I think everybody can see it. Are there any questions to this motion? Okay, seeing Councillor Palashi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Peter. Peter, just out of curiosity, in the past, what kind of costs are we looking at? And I think we've always assumed all costs, and I don't have a problem with it. But I've just never really understood what the actual dollar amount is, ballpark.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe it depends on how many board meetings that a successful Brampton councillor would attend. But just going from memory, it could be a few $1,000s, and it also depends on where the board meetings are held, whether they're held in Ottawa or sometimes they're held across the country. But there is a budget that has been set aside that's called corporate representation that would cover this should council choose to adopt this resolution, as it would for any travel to AMO or FCM related conferences that members of council wish to attend.
Okay. So I guess then I request a friendly amendment to the motion that says that the budget would come out of that.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is a given right now under the council expense policy, that is where that budget comes from. So if, as in the past, if council were to adopt this resolution, if Councillor Dillon were to be successful in his election to the FCM Board of Directors, then costs associated with his representation on that board would come from the corporate representation account.
Would come from the corporate representation account. Okay. That's not really the way I'm reading this.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the last operative paragraph, and this is a resolution form that FCM has provided to prospective candidates, is that it ensures that the council, the city council, assumes the cost, so FCM is not assuming the cost for travel. So that's the purpose of the third piece. But if it's for further clarification, as Charlotte has just put on, it could be clarified, it's to be drawn from the corporate representation account.
Okay, and that just gives me more of a level of comfort.
Yep.
The way I read it before is that council's budget as a whole would go to covering the costs, and so we have that account, and I'm a lot more comfortable than that. Kudos go to Councillor Dillon. I don't think that I certainly would have the time to be on FCM's board of directors. I know you've been there before, so you're passionate about it, and a lot more passionate than I am about representing us at FCM. So, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And just to be clear, there's a friendly amendment. You accept it?
Yeah,
okay. Thank you. Councillor Bowman?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Just a question about the FCM. Councillor Dillon also asked if anybody else wanted to do it. I certainly have no interest in doing it, but I'm just wondering if there is anyone else on council who is interested in joining FCM, and I know that we're missing several people here, so this would have to be ratified at council next week, so that would give any of the people who are not here the opportunity to speak up. I know that Councillor Dillon was on FCM at one time, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Vicente?
Thank you, Chair. Through you to staff, a question that arises from Councillor Bowman's comments. If there are other members of council that would like to be considered for this role, how would council go about selecting the person that does do it?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would have to go back and check, and I can in time for council's ratification next week. I don't know if there is a specific limitation on the number of representatives from any one municipality. I'm presuming there may be, but I'll verify that. If there are more than one member of council who wishes to put their name forward, similar to Councillor Dillon, then, and there is a limitation on the number from each municipality, then council would have to choose which member of council it wishes to push forward as a nominee.
Sure. Following from that, would there need to be a selection made by members of council if it is only perhaps one person?
Through you, if I understand your question, through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Vicente, you're asking if there's only one nominee, council would have to vote to actually support that nominee through a motion similar to this, because that is a nomination requirement of FCM. Did I understand your question correctly?
I'll try to word it better. If there are more candidates looking for the position, but there is only one position to be filled, how would we go about selecting the person that goes to FCM?
So through you, Mr. Chair, I will verify the FCM nomination requirements to confirm whether or not multiple members of the same council can put their name forward. If that's the case, then it's up to council to how many nominees they wish to put forward. If it is limited to one per municipality, then ultimately council next week will have to make a decision which of the multiple nominees it is putting forward.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, and Councillor Dillon?
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And I'd just like to add that I'm totally fine if anybody else wants to go. So essentially, what happens, if I'm not mistaken, that we are paying through our own discretionary funds to attend the AGM. And from that point forward, it's a selection process by members of FCM. If I'm not mistaken. And so I would assume that if we get to that point to the AGM, there's an election that takes place there, and so the representatives of FCM make that decision as to who goes forward. And so this motion doesn't necessarily select you as a member right away. That just gets you in the process of being selected. And so just to add on, and it is a very rigorous schedule. I was selected as a board member just because of family situation, very young children. It was difficult, but as they get older, I feel like it's a really important role for somebody for a representative from Brampton to have. There's a lot of decisions made by them that affect what the federal government does, and to have a voice there, I think, is really important. But also, it's a great learning opportunity. But at the same time, whoever does get selected will come back and report back to council as to what was achieved at whatever conference they do go to, or the AGM.
All right, thank you. Seeing no other questions, we do have a motion on the floor.
Sorry, is anybody open, and just because I want to make it fair to everybody, if anybody wants to amend this so that there is an opportunity for anybody else, or we can go forward as is.
Okay.
Yeah, we can, maybe we go through, and then we can, anybody wants to discuss this, then we can.
Sure, and I also see Councillor Wellens on the floor now, so Councillor Wellens?
For you, Chair, if just a friendly amendment would be just to make, we know that Councillor Dillon is showing interest, but maybe just for this motion today, remove his name from there and just put member of council, and then you can put your name forward next week, Councillor Dillon at council. That might just make it a little bit clearer, because there might be some members that want to think about this first, right?
Well, the email was sent out to everybody. I think everybody received the information already. I would have assumed there would have been interest if they read the email.
Well,
but,
there are 4 members
I
missing.
think, pardon?
There are 4
No, I
members.
understand that, but I think that if we leave it as is, if anybody wants to.
So you're not gonna do a friendly amendment? Okay, that's fine.
Nope.
Okay. So we do have a motion on the floor, and seeing no other questions, we'll go to a vote. All those in favor, please raise your hands.
Well, there's an amendment.
No, it was not accepted.
As a friendly, he can still put an amendment forward.
He chose not to.
Accept it.
We're not putting an
Yeah, then, okay. So once again, we have a motion on the floor. It's in front of us. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Okay, the motion carries. Moving on to correspondence, seeing none. Councilors' question period. Do any councilors have any questions? Seeing none. Public question period. Do any members of the public have any questions? Seeing none, I will pass on the chair to Councilor Vicente to chair the Public Works and Engineering section.
He's gone. Okay. Go to the chair. Go to the next one too.
There's nothing on the agenda.
Thank you, members of committee. We're now at the Public Works and Engineering section. We don't have any staff reports today, but we do have staff presentations, but we do have a report from staff, item 9.2.1, dated March 6, 2019, regarding special event road closure. I believe this item was put into consent. Is that correct? Okay, so that item is in consent, and we have no other business. Therefore, we can then move on to question period for this section. Do any members of the committee have any questions? Seeing none, do any members of the public have any questions? Seeing none, so then I turn over the chair to Councillor Santos to chair the Community Services section. Councillor Santos, the chair is yours.
Thank you, members of committee. We are now in the community services section of the agenda. Item 10.1, there are no staff presentations for today's meeting. So our next item is actually item number 10.2.1, a report from Commissioner Almenezes, Community Services dated April 1st, 2019, regarding a business case for a municipal development corporation. Are there any questions from members of council? I have Councillor Willens.
Yeah, thank you through you, Chair. Just quickly, this is more to come back with more of a tool for capitalize on better investments of property that we currently own or property that could be adjacent to where we might be, like say the Queen Street corridor or something where we make better use of the land. Is that, it's not for going out trying to purchase land in the greenfields, it's more the brownfield we're trying to redevelop economically or for other uses.
Sure. Through the chair, just to add clarity, so you'll recall that at a recent council workshop, we talked about the possibility and whether there would be some benefits of the city establishing a municipal development corporation. This really just will provide additional information for council to make that decision. So there's certain specific things that the Municipal Act and legislation states that we have to follow, whether we're going to go down that path or not. So we're going to bring in a specialist, someone who's done some of these things before, who's done it with other municipalities. We're going to put together a business case, do some engagement with the public to see the public's input, and then bring it to council for council's consideration. The primary sort of case right now that staff are thinking is the city has a surplus, or the city has some lands, and part of what we're trying to do is determine how to best develop those lands and maximize the return for the taxpayers, and we'll explore the option of whether or not a municipal development corporation can bring greater returns for that redevelopment.
Okay, yeah, so it's not to actively go out and seek properties, it's more or less to or it could, but it's more or less to see what, to get better investment for the lands that we, the stuff
yeah.
that's surplus.
I think we would sort of, if council decides to go down this path, I think we would walk before we'd run. I think we'd focus on some of the current city-owned properties, and then we could take it from there depending on the success of
And
the
there's a
corporation.
potential that we could, if we go down that road, the potential we could look at some of the areas along Queen Street that guys have been land banking, that we can try to get something moving, because there are a number of properties along Queen that investors use land banked and waiting for the right opportunity rather than developing the city. So, okay, good, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Paleshi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Al. First, how many other municipalities currently have such a corporation set up? Do we know?
Through the chair, I don't know the exact number, but I know that there are. I think Oakville just established one, and there's others. Part of what the report that will come back to council will quantify all of that and give council a firm sort of idea of the landscape so that you can make an informed decision.
So we'll reach out to other municipalities just to see how they went through that process. And then I guess, what does that third party look like?
So through the chair, we don't know what it's going to look like yet. So that's part of what the report will bring back to council. There's different permutations and combinations of what this can look like. I know
not the scope, the actual third party consultant.
Oh.
Yeah, what does that, I know it says that we have enough money to pay for it.
Correct.
How much is that?
Through the chair, so we're expecting it might be between $40,000 and $80,000. We've got some money within community services and outside services that we would pay for this work. We think it's good value for the money. It's an important decision that council needs to make, and you want to have the best information in front of you to make that decision.
Isn't that entire amount coming out of community services?
Through the chair. So the proposal would be that we would pay for the cost of the consultant to come back.
Why isn't planning take on some of that cost?
We've identified a funding source.
Yeah, we're talking about recreation centers throughout the city that need some funding.
Yeah,
I realize that, but
yeah, through the chair. So we've got different sections within community services. It wouldn't be through recreation. We've got real estate. We've got other funding sources. So we've got money for that. So at the end of the day, if you're willing, if you want to get other people to pay for it, I'm happy for that. But I think we're good, and we've identified a funding source, and we're quite comfortable in the recommendation.
And then just what kind of timeline are we? I was looking for some kind of timeline in here. I don't see it.
Through the chair, in an ideal world, we'll be back in front of council this fall. There's some urgency around this. We've got some high-profile projects that we want to move forward as soon as possible, and we want to explore what best avenue to do this. And so we want to be in front of you sooner rather than later.
Okay. Thanks, Al. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm happy to move the report.
Thank you, Councillor Paleshi, and Councillor Vicente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Al. Al, has the City of Brampton ever operated a development corporation before?
Through the chair, I believe there was a downtown development corporation at one point. I think the mandate would be significantly different from what the previous corporation was. But that's part of what the report will be coming back to council, is to really solidify what that mandate would be, what the structure would be, what the governance would be, so that when we make a decision either to move forward or not, it's something, if council decides to move forward, we know exactly what that mandate would be, and we position it to be as successful as it can be.
Thank you, through you, Chair. What was the mandate of the Downtown Development Corporation at the time when it was operating, high level?
Through the chair, before my time, I think, I know that based on discussions that we've had and based on some of the feedback and some of the research that we've done, it wasn't successful by any means. I think at the end of the day, there was a bit of the scope, the mandate wasn't, the corporation wasn't positioned to be successful. I don't think they had the ability to actually do some acquisitions and do some some things that I think would have positioned it to be a little more successful than what it was.
So I think it would be important for us to look at that case as well, to make sure that we don't commit some of the same, have the same issues. One of the thoughts that came to mind in reading this report was, do we have a list that is available to the public of property that the city currently owns?
Through the chair, I'm not sure if the city assets, if there's a database out there or not in terms of all the city's property assets or not. I mean, it certainly isn't confidential. If it's a desire of council, we can certainly have something on our website that has, you know, all of our land holdings. If that's something that council wants us to put out there.
So perhaps a thought for you as you prepare this report is whether or not the city should begin to make public, provide a list in the interests of transparency of properties that the city does hold, and maintain that list, shall we say, in perpetuity through an online database or portal. Because there are certainly questions that do come to members of council on a regular basis about, is this property owned by the city or not? What is the goal of the city in holding this property for the time that it has, and so forth. And I think that in the interest of aiding in those conversations, if that information was made public, it might be beneficial. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Vicente, and thank you for those comments. Can I ask my colleagues for the chair to speak, permission to speak?
Yes.
So just in follow-up to Councillor Vicente's point, I support that as long as there are no significant financial implications, especially as we proceed with other real estate endeavors. Okay. I have a motion from Councillor Paleshi to approve. Oh, sorry, Bowman, last minute. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you very much, through you, Madam Chair. Al, in regards to what Councillor Vicente is asking, the city owns thousands and thousands of small pieces of land through easement agreements and everything else. We're not looking at adding like 10,000 pieces onto a database website, are we? So what do we draw the line at in terms of what we hold in property as far as a list?
Through the chair, I think we can go back with our realty staff. This is something that we've created a database in the past. It's something that we're maintaining now. I think we can reasonably put something out there that makes sense. I mean, if we've got a sliver of land or utility easement, things of that sort, I don't think that's what we're proposing. I think if we say that it's something that has a tangible value that can be developed or something of those sorts, I think we could draw the line there. But I think we can apply some logic to that pretty quickly.
Good, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Bowman. I have a motion from Councillor Paleshi to approve the staff report recommendations. All those in favor? That motion is carried. Our next item is item 10.2.2, which was taken out from consent from Councillor Vicente. Councillor Vicente, do you have any comments on 10.2.2? Perfect.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, when I see these reports come before us, I always ask the same question, and it is, why is it that we as a city telegraph or make public the amount of the funds that are available to pay for a procurement of this kind? If we are going to procure locksmiths, will we be opening that tender out to any potential provider?
Through you, Chair. Yeah, we'd put that on our public bids and tenders application for the world to see.
And would these providers, would it be one provider for this contract, or would it be multiple?
Through you, Chair, I'm pretty sure it's multiple, but maybe Al can.
So through the chair, I believe what we're looking for is one primary contractor, but we would also have a secondary in the event that we've got multiple incidents, in the event that the primary contractor can get to a certain urgent situation. So one primary, and we would have a backup contractor.
Does the city currently have a contractor providing this service now?
Through the chair, yes, we do.
All right. And so, given that it's very likely that they would be submitting a proposal to provide this service going forward, why is it that we as a city continue to essentially, through a report, publish what we are willing to pay for that service?
So through you, Chair, it's an estimate, and as I remember, I guess last week when I was giving the presentation on the purchasing bylaw, anything over $1 million that we estimate is going out to the market, we get approval from council to proceed. But it is an estimate.
Should a report like, through you, Madam Chair, should a report like this perhaps be brought in camera then, in order to maintain the competitiveness of the market?
I don't believe so, through you, Chair. I think it's an estimate. They know, the marketplace knows out there, you know, the intricacies of what they're going to provide. So I don't think we take anything out of the competitive tension by doing this, but it's just our process here.
And would this process be the same across all municipalities? Would that be fair to say?
Not exactly. I think that different municipalities have different ways they procure their purchasing bylaw and their policies going forward. They all know through the budget process anyway. We like to give them an idea of what the scope of any project is. We don't want, you know, variations of pricing anyway. So I don't think it's anything that doesn't serve the market well.
I just, the reason why I continue to bring this up, and I apologize if it's, you know, repetitive, that if I'm providing a service to the market and I knew that my client is willing to pay X, you know, that certainly would impact my bid for to provide that service. And so, given that it's always our role to provide maximum value, I continue to question why we make these numbers available before even putting out to tender. That's my only observation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vicente. Councillor Paleshi.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate some of the comments that Councillor Vicente has made, removing the in-camera portion of those, because I think that sometimes we do tend to go in camera a little bit more often than the public may like us to. Justified, Peter and the solicitor, wherever you are, realize that it's justified. But maybe this is a further discussion that we can be having with the request that I made to corporate services on coming back with some additional information. And maybe what it looks like is, because I understand where Councilor Vicente is coming from, and, you know, chances are that, you know, the 2.35, you know, we've probably lowballed that a little bit, and it'll probably come in a little bit higher. And I think, you know, 9 times out of 10, that's usually the way I think it happens. But maybe there's a further conversation that we can be having on what those look like if they have to be over $1 million because of the council decision. And maybe that's what the tender says is it's over $1 million, and that's what actually gets released to the public, including all the additional information here. So maybe that's just a further discussion when you come back with that other information. Thank you, Madam Chair.
If I may, through the chair, sorry, just to provide council a little more update. So the estimates that we've put together for the PO are based on our sort of our actual costs right now. In many cases, providing that out to the marketplace provides a little bit of a level playing field so that those who are interested in the service, providing that service, know basically what they're getting themselves into. The original guys were competitively procured as well. We're constantly monitoring that. But I would say the following, that as James had said, it's sort of it's an estimate, but many times when we go out to the marketplace, those estimates, or the actual bids that come in are lower than than what we're at. So it doesn't necessarily dictate or do anything in terms of trying to tell someone that we're prepared. I mean, at the end of the day, we're prepared to pay that, but it doesn't necessarily mean if you want to be competitive, if you want to sort of ensure getting the work done, you probably want to come in well below that so that you can be a low bidder and get the work. So there's, I understand some of the concerns that have been brought forward, but I think there's pros and cons to the process for sure.
And follow up to that comment is Councillor Paleski.
Thank you. As I said before, because Al decided to speak against, so I'll retract in what I was saying. It's typically in front, council highlights or takes notice on when procurements go out at one price and then they come back at the higher price. So it's kind of that half is, or the glass is half empty kind of look. So I didn't mean that that's usually the way it happens. But that being said, maybe there's an opportunity to have kind of the high-level report that goes out to the public, and then interested parties, when they go on the bid and go or bid and whatever buy, that's when the actuals come forward to people that are realistically looking. But competition is always good for especially municipalities as well. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Willens.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thank you, Al, for clarifying that. Also, did we go to the Toronto Construction, TCA? Do we list there as well? Or is it just bid and go?
Through you, Chair, sorry. Do we
Toronto
go to?
Construction Association?
I don't believe so.
Okay, no, because just to clarify, I think Councillor Vicente brought it up. Other municipalities do put, a lot of times do put their pricing in there, because I used to bid on jobs at the TCA. That's why I wondered if you were there, but they do. And it's quite often we look at them, the base price, we would look at it and say, you know what, we're not going to touch it. And that's a lot of times it's helpful for the contractors or for the suppliers in there, because there's a lot of guys will look at some of that and they say, I'm not touching that, I can't do it for that. So, but we don't do the TCA, Toronto Construction?
So through you, Chair, the Toronto Construction Association, the Board of Trades, the construction media, sometimes they pick up our ads and send them out.
Okay, so sometimes
but it's nothing that we push out.
They'll do it on their own, but
they do it on their own.
Putting it at the Toronto Construction Association, because there's an awful lot of these companies at TCA. That's where a lot of the architects, engineers, a lot of guys put out stuff there, and the big guys.
So through you, Chair, can you clarify that? Sorry.
Toronto Construction Association.
Yeah.
There's one in Mississauga as well. It's just down on Argentia, I think. But that's where you see all the big bids. You see the 3P projects. You see a lot of municipalities in those areas. Just another avenue to get maybe better bidders.
And through you, Chair, so we put it on our bids and tenders site. They pick up.
So they pick it up. Okay.
They pick up those ads.
So we don't have to send it to them.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're well aware of all our activity.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Do we need a motion to receive the report and the recommendations? To approve the recommendations and receive the report, I have a motion from Councillor Vicente. All those in favor? That motion is carried. We are now in other business, item number 10.3.1, which is a discussion at the request of myself regarding youth activities and programs. And so I wanted to add this to the agenda just because it is, in fact, Youth Week, as we had the proclamation earlier this morning with Orlando Bowen from One Voice, One Team. I wanted to put this up here because I was, in July, inspired by a conversation that Councillor Vicente and I participated in with One Voice, One Team. And we sat with about 25 or 30 young people asking questions as to why young people get involved in crime. What is it that young people need support from the city in order to improve their situation, etc. And they told us very specifically that they're lacking opportunities. They don't know what the city is doing to help young people. They need jobs and they need mentors. And so the premise of the motion on gun and gang violence and taking a very systemic, comprehensive approach really is based on those conversations with those young, or inspired by the conversations by those young people. And in follow-up, Commissioner Menezes, as well as our Director of Strategic Communications, sat down and had a meeting to talk about what programs do exist in the city that support young people and provide them with opportunities. And I think everyone received this earlier today. So what our staff, our awesome staff, and specifically Derek Boyce, who is here, put together a guide of all of the youth programs, recreation programs in the city that's for our youth. In addition to that, we brought forward a motion to create a youth council for the city of Brampton. We have an entrepreneur center that also has youth programs. And I just heard from Commissioner Menezes that we have co-op students who are working on an app, a youth app for Brampton. And it's going to be an app and a program created by young people, for the city of Brampton, which is an incredible initiative. So all of these things I'm sharing very publicly because I think the parents, the staff, our council colleagues, our mayor, we all need to be sharing this and pushing it out to the door so that young people know that the city is supporting them. And that is part of how we will address some of the systemic issues related to gun and gang violence in the city of Brampton. So contrary to some of the criticism regarding that motion that it's only about research, in fact, it's quite the opposite. A lot of the things that we've been doing for the past month or so since that motion has come forward are coming to fruition, such as this, such as highlighting the youth in our city. And so I would ask Derek Boyce, perhaps, to come up and just share a little bit more about this guide, which I think it's the first guide we've ever had in the city for young people. And also, Commissioner Menezes, if you want to share a little bit more about the co-op program that the young people are working on, that specific app for the city of Brampton, and anything else that I have missed in my comments.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. So, as you stated, this is really the culmination of some work from my team, some of which are here today, really putting together something that I think one of the things that we would admit that we're deficient in is sharing the good news of the things that we do on a day-to-day basis. And so this guide really talks about, at the front end, the volume or the depth of which we support youth in terms of the numbers of youth that are coming through our community centers and recreation, the number of youth that are participating, the number of youth that we hire. We hire about 2,000 part-time individuals a year, and probably 80% of those are between the ages of 16 to 24. And so this guide is really a comprehensive effort to just broadcast some of the things that are available, and it goes beyond programs. We have partnerships with the school boards, programs such as SHISM, programs such as ICE. We do a lot of things, Swim to Survive, with schools and youth. And we're really trying to, in this document really intended for you as council, really for you to help promote as well. When you're talking to your constituents, I know I've gotten emails from probably all of you in terms of what do we do about youth hiring, what do we do about youth programs, and so we thought that this would be a really good mechanism to bring a comprehensive information to you so that you had something that you could point to when your constituents come to you and say, well, here's what's available. And this is a snapshot. Our programs change. You'll see there's a page in here on some new programs. We're getting into esports. We're getting into Camp EMS. We're doing partnerships. So we've got a new rock wall coming at Ken Giles Center, which will be fantastic, and another way for youth and kids to get involved. And then we've got opportunities for youth to get involved with their families. I think sometimes we neglect the importance of family events and being able to bring your son, daughter, whatever it may be, to an event. And so this really speaks to those things, and we hope you will find it a useful guide. And by no means, we're always trying to be better. And so we're always trying to engage. We're always trying to find partners, and whether it's the school boards, it's our sports alliance. We're working out there to actively engage youth because really, I think the speaker in the Orlando said it this morning. It's really, you got to try to get youth when they're young, steer them away from those things that, and I'm a big believer in if youth are active, and you've heard me say this many times, I want youth in our centers hanging out
And then I want them engaged in something. So as if they're there, let's get them engaged, let's get them active, let's get them doing things. So this booklet right here, hopefully you'll find it useful for you. It's really for your consumption and for you to have some information that you can then be recreation promoters for us.
Thank you so much, Derek. I do have some members on the board as well, but just a very quick question from the chair, and that's in terms of distribution. Is it possible for us to send this out to make available at libraries or community centers, organizations like One Voice, One Team? I'm hoping that we could push this out so that it gets in the hands of parents and our young people.
Absolutely. So I will sit down with our strategic communications group and determine how we can just tweak this a little bit for public consumption. We also do a lot with schools in terms of getting things out through school newsletters, and we meet with schools in our neighborhood. So we've got some different avenues. So we definitely can take a look at how we can tweak this and get it out there on a more mass scale, even electronically through our redesigned website and some other electronic media.
And you just gave a segue into my next point, which is, in addition to this, we are also going forward this week with a social media strategy and an online strategy to let as many people know about this. Thanks, Derek. I have Councillor Willens on the board.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. No, this is excellent. I'm glad turning the pages here out. We saw something on fishing. Good work. And actually, I'd like to, this is a good opportunity to talk about the youth. I'm glad it's on the agenda because I'd like to commend Councillor Bowman for starting his youth council in his ward prior to even having a motion come to council. And I look forward to working with one of the gentlemen on your youth council to see what we can do in our wards up in wards 2 and 6 to duplicate something that
We're already starting one.
I know we are. I know we are. I'm just going to compliment him, okay?
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Singh.
Yeah, I just want to commend the work you've done regarding the initiatives surrounding youth. It is very important, and given that we are one of the youngest cities as well, makes it that much more important. And kudos to the councillors for starting a youth council. I think we all should, and I know some of us are already planning on it, so I guess a little shout out to Councillor Bowman as well for doing that. All right.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, I was going to announce that. No. Al, this question about the app that we're going to be working on with the youth, was it one of the youth groups that's been in the hackathons that ECDEV has put up over the last year and a half? Because I know, attending those, that there was a number of applications that some of those groups designed that had a lot to do with youth activity in the city.
Through the chair. So in regards to the work that's been going on that Councillor Santos mentioned, so on an annual basis, Community Services hires co-op students and interns, recent grads from university. And part of the challenge that we gave this current cohort was for them to get together, collaborate, and really help the city define a strategy to get to the youth, but developed by youth. And we talk about, let's give these programs out to parents and principals and school boards, but a lot of youth, we were all youth at one point. If it comes from your parents, you likely toss it aside anyways because you don't want to hear, you don't want to be told, and when you're a youth, you know better than your parents. So we've challenged our current cohort to look at opportunities for us to get directly to their peers, to their age groups, and they've come back with some ideas, and in an ideal world, they will be in front of you actually doing a presentation to council as we develop this youth program, this youth engagement, so you can hear from the youth themselves in terms of what they're doing and the ideas that they have, because, we hire these young folks, and every year, I do a little speech to them, and I always say to them, you guys are coming here to learn from us, but the reality is we learn from them, and we learn significantly from them because these young folks have got some great ideas, things that an old guy like me wouldn't even think of, and it's inspiring. I mean, they just did a presentation for our community services team last week, and the amount of sort of intelligence and thought that these young folks have is just awe-inspiring. And so part of the sort of the process that they've got going on right now is they're looking at a potential app that would carry some of these programs. And today's focus is recreation, but the reality is we've got a ton of programs, whether it's in arts and culture, whether it's in economic development, public works, the reality is the city is a major employer of youth, and that is such a critical piece to sort of our society and our city, where the first introduction for youth in terms of a work environment will be with the city. And it's imperative that we put our best foot forward, that we have programs available that sets our youth on the right path. And recreation is doing a fabulous job, and the entire city is doing a fabulous job. We just need to be able to get that word out there and do it properly, so that it isn't something that we're just sort of promoting and sort of looking for ourselves. It's how do we get the youth to say, wow, I didn't even realize that. How do I become a member of this? How do I become part of that? And that's what these brainstorming sessions and the strategy that we're developing is really all about. So you're going to hear a lot more about that in the coming months. And our hope is that the actual interns and co-ops will be in front of you actually doing a presentation shortly.
Fantastic. That's great news. I'm just wondering, I don't know, Kelly, if you've got some of the teams that were in the hackathon that did develop some apps that had to do with youth in all sorts of things, arts, culture, recreation, even transit. Whether you could, if they're not involved, if you could hook them up. Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you so much. It's always inspiring to know that we're doing incredible work to put young people at the forefront of our city. Really, really proud. And I just want to give a shout out to any of the media who are watching. Please write about this. There is no motion on the floor. This item was just a discussion topic. Our next item of the agenda is 10.4, correspondence. There is no correspondence. Item 10.5, councillors' question period. Are there any questions from members of council at this time regarding this section? Seeing none, we are now at public question period. Are there any members of the public who would like to ask a question? I have Sylvia up there at the top.
Hello.
Go ahead.
So I was curious on the Development Corporation, if the city was looking at Bramley Limited. I know it went bankrupt about 25 years ago, but it was involved in building a substantial portion of the city. You talked about the Development Corporation, and I'm aware Bramley Limited was somewhat different in how it was designed, but is the city looking at how that functioned for how we'd go forward with the Development Corporation? Can you hear me?
Councillor Paleshi, would you like to take that on? Go ahead.
So Bramley Limited was a private corporation.
Isn't this corporation still going to be a for-profit corporation where the city would be the sole shareholder?
We're not looking at development or anything like that. Like we're not going to be developers.
Well, Bramley Limited also had holdings that it didn't build and own throughout the city, but then also across Canada. It's like, is the Development Corporation going to be confined to the geographical limitations of the city, or would it?
So Bramley Limited was a private organization. You could call it Coca-Cola Limited if you want. It was completely private. It had nothing to do with the city. They just started in Bramley, and that's why their name. They were named Bramley until they changed to, I think, Wimpy and Tarmac, and then went on and on and on. So I think the best thing for us to do is, because it's so early on in this process, is see what that report looks like, and maybe that report will answer some of your questions. But any reference to Bramley Limited, like it was a private organization. Big venture.
Thank you, Sylvia. There are no further people on my board right now. We are on item 11, the referred matters list, a list of outstanding business referred or deferred by council or a standing committee. The clerk reports quarterly with the list, status, resolution, and/or expected reporting date of the outstanding business referred or deferred. The current list is linked as part of our meeting today. Do any members have any questions regarding the referred matters list? Seeing none, we are at public question period, where we invite members of the public to ask any questions about any recommendations made by committee at today's meeting. There's a 15-minute limit. Any questions from the members of public? Seeing none, moving on. There are no items in closed session, so we are now at adjournment. Thank you, members, for your respectful consideration and recommendations today, and thank you, staff, for your information and advice. Today's recommendations will be presented to City Council for approval at its next regular meeting on May the 8th, 2019. Committee is next scheduled to meet Wednesday, May 15th, 2019 at 9:30 a.m. May I have a motion to adjourn today's meeting? Moved by Councillor Vicente. All those in favor? That carries. Have a wonderful morning.